Arsenal can beat Liverpool at Anfield. I genuinely believe we're capable of it. Our record against the traditional Big Six shows us that. We haven't lost there in, I think, 3-4 games. This would be the 5th if we come away without a defeat. Arsenal have shown that they are ready for these big games. Arsenal have done everything but lift the silverware at the end of it. So Arsenal know that they're a big team and a big club going to Liverpool, but that doesn't mean that we can just bank on everything we've done. We've got to have a particular tactical plan, and we'll need to keep readdressing that plan and keep adjusting it to what Liverpool's weaknesses are this season. Because this season they look a little bit different to last season. So what I want to do in this video is break down what we've seen early in Liverpool's games and what we've seen from Arsenal that actually make us very well equipped to go get a point there. Not just a point, a win. But at least a point. At least come away without defeat. But I think Arsenal can win. Now, the first thing I want to do is take you to the tactical pad and show you the 11s. Now, a couple of things that stand out. Ethan Nwaneri, I believe, will come in for Martin Odegaard. And Madueke, I believe, will start on the right instead of on the left for Bukayo Saka, which means Martinelli will probably get a start. Now, the area of Liverpool's team I'm really excited by is this. Konate and Szoboszlai. Because you've got a player there that looks out of form, whose head looks somewhere else in Konate, and Szoboszlai, who actually I thought did very well against Newcastle, isn't a natural right back, gets forward up the pitch, might drag Konate into areas and duels that he's not comfortable in, but that might suit a certain number 14 for Arsenal. Let's break that all down and explain exactly what I mean. First, I want to show you the average positions of Liverpool against Newcastle. Szoboszlai, the number 8, is higher than the number 6, Gyokeres. He did have that little bit more license to get forward, and that pulled Konate up the pitch a little bit more too. But just to really show you how high up he got at times, I'll show you his heat map. This all comes from SofaScore, by the way. The orange areas are the bits that he was kind of populating the most on the pitch. And as you can see, next to Konate, there's an area where he obviously played quite a bit of football, but then nearer Salah. If you look at Salah's average position in the game, that was an area of the pitch that Szoboszlai took up very, very frequently. So he was very attacking, he was getting forward a lot, and he was actually finding himself in areas supposedly where you can actually get yourself one-on-one with the Konate and exploit Liverpool a little bit in that area. Now, we're going to come back to Liverpool and quite how and why they leave this area exposed and why it's important for Arsenal, especially in open play, to try and hurt them there. But the first thing I want to do is talk about how Arsenal can set the tone from the start. And there's some really interesting patterns I've noticed from kickoff in both the Arsenal-Leeds game and the Newcastle-Liverpool game. First thing I want to show you is this picture here. We've got Leeds kicking off at the Emirates, and we've got Viktor Gyokeres right next to Martin Odegaard pressing together, very close together. But it looks to me like Gyokeres has curved his run slightly as the ball's getting to Leeds' right centre-back in the hope that they channel their football down the right. In the second picture, you can see him making that run because the centre-back has now set himself to go down that right channel. And as you can see, Arsenal do win the ball back, and what it leaves is a fullback high up the pitch for Leeds, and Gyokeres pulling into that left channel to go one-on-one with the Leeds centre-back. I think Arsenal have shown a few times that they're able to curve runs in a certain way when they press from that front two to dictate where the opposition are going to build up and to force them playing down a certain way. Now, this isn't genius stuff, right? Pressing triggers, angles of press is always been something to try and dictate where the opposition go. But it's interesting that Arsenal have shown from a kickoff that they can try and work a press that forces the team down that right-hand side a little more. Let me show you what Liverpool did from their kickoff at Newcastle, because they kicked that game off, which is interesting. Well, it's not interesting, it's a complete chance, right? But the point is they did. That was just interesting because we're comparing it to how Leeds did it. And what we can see is Szoboszlai, Salah, Wirtz, everyone almost sprinting. It's like a front 6 or 7, all ready to sprint right up the pitch because Van Dijk's going to launch this. But again, they channel it down the right and they're looking to get those players really high up the pitch. Can Arsenal try and work a situation if Liverpool kick off? And again, it's slightly dependent on that, right? But can they work a situation in which they find Szoboszlai up the pitch, we catch them cold quite quickly, we stretch them quite early to set the tone for the game? Now, I've talked about this in terms of the kickoff. It's a 50-50 chance really whether we're going to kick off or whether they are, and whether we're able to kind of dictate the game from the very early minutes in this way. But let's talk about the press in general. I want to take you to the tactical pad and we're going to move the players up the pitch, because in build up Arsenal can still try and impact the way Liverpool are going to build up. Now, I've mentioned before, I don't want them building up. I'm going to just show the players here. I don't want them building up through Van Dijk or Gyokeres or even getting it into the likes of Gravenberch and Jones. So I'd be marking quite tight on those players. I'd be getting Madueke, and we'll explain why it's Madueke in a second. I'd be getting Timber really high up the pitch, Waneri, Rice. I'd be getting them to squeeze up on those players because I believe that's the side of the pitch that Liverpool are going to build up a little bit better. I would be trying to force them to play these passes into Konate or Szoboszlai because I believe, even though Szoboszlai's numbers actually in possession are very good, I believe that is the weaker area on the ball for Liverpool. So we play it on. If it goes to Van Dijk, and what I've tried to really highlight here is that Gyokeres hasn't sprinted to Van Dijk, hasn't sprinted to Konate. We're going to show evidence of this in a sec. And Martinelli has sort of stood off Szoboszlai to force what we hope is a long ball down the channel. We want to keep testing Konate on the ball because I believe we're able to win those duels and win the ball back. The ball goes long from, I know I've kind of recreated the situation, but if the ball goes long from Konate, Gyokeres has peeled off into that one-on-one battle like he did against Leeds, and hopefully we can catch them cold and catch them quite open up the pitch. I really believe this is something that Arsenal can try and engineer throughout the game. Konate into wider areas, Szoboszlai up the pitch because their fullbacks always get really high up the pitch. Konate pulled into those areas into duels with Gyokeres, and now there's space to open up and there's actually more transition moments for Arsenal. I really believe that is possible. I want to show you in particular why, and why the press would look like that. So this is Arsenal versus Leeds, and you've got Bukayo Saka here, you've got Viktor Gyokeres here, and you've got Zubimendi, and we know that Zubimendi eventually wins the ball off here. We've got Ødegaard pressing on the Leeds player there. But what's interesting about this press is, again, there's quite a bit of distance between Gyokeres, and let's just show it like this, Gyokeres to that Leeds player there, and to be fair, Saka's leaving a little bit of space, but you get my point. There's a little bit of space between Gyokeres and that centre-back. Almost like he might be kind of willing to press the goalkeeper, but I actually think he's trying to bait that press out there. I think actually Gyokeres, by standing off the centre-back is enough, is actually trying to bait the goalkeeper into playing it wide. So again, Leeds go with a long pass down this channel. But he hasn't. He's actually ended up going right into there, and it creates a chance for us anyway because Zubimendi is so quick onto the press. So it worked out. It actually created a goal-scoring opportunity for Gyokeres because when this ball comes into the feet of the defender, Zubimendi wins it back and it makes its way back to Gyokeres, who puts it wide. But actually, Arsenal's press kind of worked, just not in the way I think they were originally engineering it. But again, the point I'm trying to really make here is Saka and Gyokeres' positions here on the press. It feels like they're baiting that ball out wide so it can go long. And it feels like Saka's much higher up than a Madueke, who is actually nowhere to be seen in this space out here. Like, Madueke's not there. He's much, much deeper than Saka. And as we illustrated earlier, when we were trying to recreate what an Arsenal press could look like against Liverpool, we had Madueke really high on Van Dijk, and we had Martinelli dropping deeper, almost like we're inviting Liverpool to go down that side. And I just think Arsenal are actually quite equipped to do that now because it suits a press that we've done against Leeds, but it actually suits, I think, something we saw quite a lot against Manchester United as well. And I think it's going to work really, really well for us. That's the press and that's the off-the-ball stuff. Arsenal's defensive principles are really, really important. And that's why I wouldn't actually chuck Eberechi Eze into this 11 immediately. Because the coaching and the off-the-ball stuff and understanding everything we do to a T without the ball, out of possession, is going to be crucial to stopping Liverpool. So who understands that? Waneri, who's been doing it with the first team for a good year or two? Or Eze, who's come in and has barely had a week of training? I think this is really, really important, guys. I think it's so easy to say we'll get Eze in the team because he's brilliant, sure. But our foundations off the ball are crucial. And it's why I would be leaning. And I know on Forever Arsenal I said I'd give Eze the start. But as I've thought about this more and analysed it more, I really, really think it's got to be players that are comfortable, which is why Martinelli comes back in, why Madueke. I think, look, he's been starting for Chelsea on the right in a high-pressing team. He'll know what to do. And I think it's got to be Waneri potentially trying to recreate what Ødegaard does. And as you can see, Ødegaard is deeper than Saka in the press. It'd normally be Ødegaard pressing as a front two with Gyokeres and Saka maybe a little bit deeper. So I find that really interesting. In possession, we need to make sure we hit the channels too because I want those one-on-one battles between Gyokeres and Konate. Now let me stress, last year, In fact, almost any other year. In fact, prime Van Dijk and Konate, I'm saying Gyokeres, don't get involved because you will not win this battle. Konate and Van Dijk are they're two of the best one-on-one duellers in world football, especially from centre-back, and they will be brilliant at covering in wide areas when at their best. But they're conceding goals as a unit, Liverpool, and Konate isn't looking quite the same. Now, Gyokeres will try and peel off into these battles with Konate, and I really hope he does. Let me show you him peeling into the channels against Leeds. This is obviously for the goal when Calafiori plays the ball over the top. Gyokeres peels off into that space behind the fullback, getting into a one-on-one with the centre-back. This is another move where I believe Max Dowman's got the ball. Gyokeres is peeling onto that right centre-back again. That is the area he wants to get into. And in a completely different move, I know it looks like it's the same move, but a completely different one. Again, Gyokeres sprinting to attack the box as Waneri plays it wide to Dowman. Gyokeres is the one who's peeling off onto that right centre-back again with their fullback, desperately trying to track back. Peeling off into those channels is something that Gyokeres A does brilliantly, and we saw that in his time at Sporting, but B is something we've seen him do quite well early on at Arsenal, whether it be in the pre-season games, not so much against Man United, but we certainly saw it in this game against Leeds. But I actually think he can have some joy in the central battles with Konate too, because Konate isn't dominating in the air as we saw for the goal. But there's this moment I caught when I was watching the game back, Liverpool versus Newcastle. Ball goes on from the, I think it's Nick Pope. Gordon, he's batting with Konate. He doesn't win the header. He actually outmuscles him to the point where he's able to turn him, and as you can see here, get the wrong side of him to take a touch and play. I mean, this is just unheard of for Konate to not only lose duels, but to Anthony Gordon, who's not a striker and stands at 5'10". I mean, that's very surprising, and I think it tells you that if Viktor Gyokeres is on it, he can, with his strength and physicality and pace and intelligence and his kind of willingness to get into these hustles and bustles with other centre-backs, I think he can actually get some change out of Konate more than I ever thought he necessarily would. Weirdly, I actually think Havertz would have been a good fit for this game because he's caused Van Dijk and Konate problems before, but it's going to have to be Gyokeres. But I think he's got the tools to do it, as I hope we've highlighted well enough in this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, people. Arsenal, to sum up, can beat Liverpool by attacking the left channel, pressing them and baiting them into going down their right and getting their two worst ball players to play out the back. They're still good, but they're not Van Dijk and Gyokeres. Try force them into errors and make sure that we counter press with Gyokeres peeling off into those channels, both when we're pressing, but also when we're in possession, trying to expose a team that get their fullbacks really high up the pitch. If we do that, there will be space for Ødegaard if he's fit, for Waneri, for Eze if he comes on, for even Declan Rice to run into. There will be space for our midfielders to have some joy, but it's going to take some selfless work from Gyokeres, which I believe he has in him. The guy works so hard. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think Arsenal can win at Anfield? Do you think this is the way to do it? Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel as well. And there's been lots of content around Nketiah, the win the other day. There's so much on the channel, so go have a little look. Sharoy's back with the Goonerverse podcast and Ben with his brilliant analysis as always on Nketiah. So yeah, hit the like button, subscribe, and we'll see you very soon. Come on, Arsenal. Let's get the win at Anfield.